Okay, it's 10 a.m. It's actually 10:01, so we're not starting the year off right. We're a minute behind. Going to open the orientation for the House Election Law Committee. We'll start with the pledge. Representative Toner, you want to start with you want to lead us in the pledge? Okay, welcome. It's good to be back. Welcome to the House Election Law Committee. We're going to do a quick 20-minute orientation. So the first thing we'll do is let's do the old go around the horn and have all the members introduce themselves quite quickly. We've got 20 minutes, so I'll give my speech on speed here at the end of this, but we're going to move quickly on everything. So Representative Guskowski, would you like to introduce yourself, where you're from? Please hit the mic button. Yep.
My name's Jim Godofsky from Northwood, represent Northwood and Nottingham, and it is my first go around, just newly elected.
Excellent. Next up.
I'm Travis Toner. I represent Belmont, and I'm also newly elected.
Excellent.
I'm Representative Alvin C., and this is my second term, but I was on Transportation Committee last time.
Hi, I'm Representative Heath Howard. I represent the towns of Stratford and Barrington. I'm subbing today. I normally serve on ED&A. Thanks.
Hello, I'm Catherine Perdomo O'Brien. I'm from Derry. This is my fifth term in the House. I was previously in the Labor Committee, and this is my fourth term on this committee.
Hi, thanks. I'm Juliet Harvey Bolia, and I represent Tilton and Samberton. This is my third term, and I was serving on Resources, Recreation Development last time around. Thanks.
Representative Clayton Wood, represent Pittsfield and Chichester, and this is my second term on election law.
I'm Jerry Ward from Portsmouth. I think I've been on this 6 times. Too long, anyway.
Good morning. My name is Lisa Mazer. I represent the towns of Goffstown and Ware. This is my second term. I am substituting for Representative Quayle today, and I usually present on the HHSEA committee in my second term. Thank you.
And I'm Ross Barry. I also represent Goffstown and Ware now. Proud to be back in my old district of 44 before it turned to 39, and now I'm back to 44, I guess. But Ware and Goffstown.
Hello, I'm Representative Claudine Burnham, and I'm from Stratford District 2, Milton, and Rochester Ward 5. This is my second term on election law.
I'm Connie Lane, and this is my fourth term on election law, my fourth term as a representative, and I'm from Ward 2 here in Concord.
Hi, I'm Bob Wary. I'm from Hillsborough District 13, which is the town of Hudson. And this is my second term and my second term on election law.
Representative Matt Wilhelm, represent Manchester Ward 1, fourth term in the House, previously served as the House Minority Leader, and this is my first term on election law. Although I did have the honor of serving with the chairman and Connie and others on redistricting a few years ago.
We'll show you how to do it right. We'll get you.
I'm looking forward to it. Thank you, Chairman.
James Newsome, representing Hopkinton and Bow, and this is my first term in the House.
Gary Gilmore, Dover, Ward 3. This is my sixth term, but there's been a 22-year absence in between, so it's just sort of like I'm a newbie too. And this is probably my fourth term on election law.
Welcome back. Okay. So we'll do some quick housekeeping measures here. So we have in our possession 70 bills. We might get to 80. So that's more than double the next committee. So for everyone who decided we shouldn't have a table calendar, when we're sitting through the 120th hour of hearings, you'll maybe think about that. But so because we're going to have 75 or 80 bills all said and done, everything we do is going to have to be quick. So I will do my best when scheduling to figure out which bills have more public interest than not, but I am not a psychic. So things that I do is I look at like online signups and that sort of deal to kind of gather it. But because I have to do it a week out and a lot of bills don't get pushed online for testimony, it's a little bit of a guessing game. So I'll be relying on experience with topics we've handled before, and obviously any sort of data point that I can get. But there will more likely than not, if there's significant public testimony, be time limits for testimony, because otherwise we will be here. We actually just won't make early bill deadlines. We just won't do it. So you can go ahead and block off Tuesdays will be the days we primarily meet. Those days will be mostly full days. Today's the exception because my wife has an ultrasound for our new child. So you guys get to get off early because I get to go and be a dad. But other than that, that's kind of going to be the cadence. I have told the ranking member, Representative Lane, I won't be calling any bills that's not noticed without her consent. It's not the rule, but we're going to do that. I think it's a good practice and precedent. So we will be doing that. Bills will be noticed. So you'll see in every time there's a hearing, the default will be executive session may be called. I do reserve the right to open the bill up for discussion. So if we have some downtime, which I don't think we'll have much of, I'm going to put that in there so we can talk to each other and sort things out in public. But you don't have to worry about the vote actually taking place unless it is specifically noticed like it is this afternoon. So I think that's my big speed. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I'm missing. Oh, I need to introduce our committee assistant. Robin, are you here or did she leave? She left. All right. So we have our committee assistant, Robin, and our, oh, I'm not connected to the internet. That's worthless. I believe our researcher is named David. I'll send it around. But both our committee assistant and our committee researcher are new. So if you have anything that you need researched, obviously that goes through the chair. But please, send it to me. And I will say our committee assistant's been wonderful so far. I haven't had a chance really to interact with our committee researcher too much. But if you need anything, she's wonderful. I'm here to help. Trying to think what else. You should have. They're working on printing all of the bills, but obviously we don't have them all yet, so they can't print things they don't have. But when that comes, you can expect a stack about that thick. I think that's it. Does anybody have any questions, comments, concerns before we have the Secretary of State do some introductions? Perfect. Mr. Secretary, it's good to see you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's good to see you as well. Members of the committee, it's great to see the veterans back in the room, and it's nice to meet the new ones. We look forward to working with you. Before we get into the orientation, a couple of resources that are available to you. Representative Harvey Bolia, could you just raise your election law book? We've passed those out to the newer members. If the older members need one of those, just stop in the office in room 204 of the State House, and we'll be happy to get one of those for you. We will be publishing the next updates this summer after the legislative session is over, so that for the next legislative session, you'll have a completely updated book. There is an addendum that is available that have all of the laws that passed during the last legislative session, and we will make sure that you get copies of those so that you have the up-to-date inserts for the book. The other larger document is the election procedure manual, which we distribute to all local election officials who have responsibilities in conducting an election. That's considered the Bible of running elections, and you should have a copy of that as well. If you don't, just come and see us. Our office door, by the way, this is Aaron Hennessy, who you will probably be seeing more than me during the session. Aaron is my Deputy Secretary of State, and we have a great working relationship. And so I'm sure you'll see a lot of both of us over the course of the session. The Secretary of State's office is a fairly large state agency, and among the divisions that we have are corporations, where we register all business entities that operate in New Hampshire. We have the Bureau of Securities, which regulates broker dealers that deal with financial instruments. We have the Division of Vital Records, which keeps track of births, deaths, marriages, divorces, things like that. And we have the Division of Archives and Records Management, which keeps the state's most historic documents, everything that goes back to pre-colonial times. I think the oldest document we have in the archives is the mid-1600s, and then a lot of records through the colonial times, some great Civil War records, governor records, everything in between. And then we manage agency records that are between active status and destruction status. There's a retention period that we keep track of. If agencies need to retrieve records that are in the archives, we can do that for them. We've got over 100,000 boxes of agency records in the state archives, and there's constant new records being brought to the archives and a destruction process that goes along with that. But one of the most important functions that we do in the Secretary of State's office is elections, and that's why we're here in front of you this morning. We have been very busy the last couple of years, and the things that we've accomplished are a brand new voter registration database, which replaced the legacy system that we had. That's going to be really beneficial to the local election officials that really are responsible for maintaining the data that gets entered into the system. Along with that, we have in place some really strong cybersecurity measures to make sure that our electronic systems are safe and secure. And at some point in the future, we can talk about those processes and procedures. The Ballot Law Commission has approved 2 new ballot counting devices that are replacing the legacy AccuVote system, which has been used now for 30 plus years in cities and towns in New Hampshire. The newer devices use digital scan technology, which means that an image of every single ballot can be recorded. And the advantage to that is it really opens up the doors to the types of post-election audits that we can conduct, comparing the electronic record to the actual physical record of the actual paper ballot that was cast in the election. Of the 2 devices that have been approved, one has received EAC, Election Assistance approvals. The EAC is a federal agency that sets standards for those devices. And so there are several dozen towns now that are actually using the Voting Works device, which utilizes open source software. And we can talk about what that means in a future election. Again, significant improvements. The other device is the Dominion ImageCast device, which is sold and maintained by LHS Associates, the same company that services the AccuVote machines that are out there. Their device is not being deployed yet. They're still waiting for some final approvals. In addition, there are a large number of towns now that are using electronic poll books as the check-in vehicle. They have to be maintained in parallel with a paper checklist, but the advantage that the cities and towns are seeing are efficiency when voters are checking in, because they can get into any line to check in and not one that is assigned by letters of the alphabet. And then at the end of the night, when they close out the electronic poll books, the number of voters that actually checked in for that election is instant. And it saves the supervisors of the checklist the time of having to go through every page on paper, counting those numbers. And then because the information that is collected is in electronic form, that information can be uploaded to the voter registration database. And hopefully there will be a lot fewer errors as a result of that process, because the supervisors of the checklist don't have to manually enter that data that they're reading off of a checklist form. In addition to all of those items, we have, and we've mentioned this to the committee before, but we have more funds in the Help America Vote Act election fund account than we need to actually run that program. And so we have been cost sharing with cities and towns for the purchase of new ballot counting devices and electronic poll books, their choice. And there are many towns that have taken us up on that offer, and we are spending down some of the surplus of the funds that we have in that regard. There's just 2 or 3 minutes left before your next hearing, so I'm going to stop there and just say that we have an open door policy in my office. If you have any questions or want to talk about bills or whatever, come on over. I would like to encourage groups of you to schedule a meeting with us at the archives so that we can give you a tour of we call it the HAVA office, but that's where the staff maintains the Help America Vote Act mandates, maintaining the voter registration database. It's where we train election officials on those systems. And there's a lot that goes on up there that we would certainly love to show you. So with that, Mr. Chair, I'm happy to answer some questions if you think there's time.
We have 3 minutes to kill. So if anybody has questions, 3 minutes. We have 3 minutes to kill. Okay. Not seeing any. Thank you. Mr. Secretary, do you want to introduce did you introduce your staff? I'm sorry. I know we, Deputy Secretary Hennessy, is there anyone else that we should, in our orbit, we should be aware of?
Not here today, but
Okay.
Patty Lovejoy is the Senior Deputy Secretary. You may see her at some of the hearings. Elections Director is Patricia Pietsu. Communications Director is Anna Sventek. We have a voter and civics outreach coordinator. That's Lily Wu. And I'm sure at some point over the course of the legislative session, you'll get to meet all of those individuals.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Representative Lane.
You reminded me about Ms. Bloom. Has she started going to schools and what has she done? I think she was hired this summer, right? Has she been active since then and what are her duties exactly?
She's been very active. There was a great article in the Concord Monitor, is either this morning or over the weekend. She spent the first few months learning. One of the charges that I gave to her was to go out and talk with the different constituencies of elections to find out what the needs are. She's done a great job identifying those and is ready to roll out some really great programs. The scope is well beyond just schools. My instruction to her was to educate not only students, but also groups like veterans, minorities, seniors, with the goal being to encourage more people, regardless of age, to participate in the election process as poll workers so that we can replenish our ranks. That's a really tall order, but there's some exciting things that are going to come out of this. And, it's great to have her on board.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay. Thank you. Yes, Representative Wilhelm.
Just a quick question for the secretary.
Sure.
Got a moment. Do you have the current balance of HAVA funds?
I don't have the exact number, but it's probably in the $12 million range.
It's about 12 million from my last count. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Secretary. It's 10:20, so we're going to end up our orientation. Nailed it. And open up the public hearing for House Bill 67 FNA relative to agreements with the Secretary of State for the use of accessible voting machines. Before we start the hearing, I want to give a quick shout out. We have a special guest in our audience. Former Representative Hamlet has joined us. She couldn't get away, I guess. So it's good to see you, even though you're not with us anymore and you are missed. Honorable Hamlet. What? Oh, well, Russ is here, but he's on the committee. Everybody knows who Russ is. Needs no introduction. You weren't here to introduce yourself.
It's a joy to see you again.
I'm sure you feel that way. Okay, first up, Representative Weary. And Representative Weary, you've already made the first faux pas of the year. I need a pink card from you after you're done introducing House Bill 67. So we've got about counting. Oopsies. Yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 people. If you need to sign up, please fill out a pink card, hand it to Representative Guskowski, who will then run it on up for us. Everybody has signed up for 2 minutes, so I'm going to ask people to keep their remarks to 2 minutes. The next bill, I don't think has a lot of people signed up, so if we go over, it's not the end of the world. But when we get to 2 minutes, I might say, hey, we're getting to, if you could reach the end, but I won't be cutting off hard at 2 minutes. But if we could please keep our remarks abbreviated to the time you requested, which everybody requested at 2 minutes. And then I will be imposing the rule that I had last term, which is lobbyists go last. So if you're a lobbyist, you can plan to go last. Thank you. Representative Weary.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair and honorable committee members. For the record, my name is Robert Weary. I have the privilege of representing Hillsborough District 13, the great town of Hudson, the 5th largest town by population in New Hampshire. On a quick, relevant personal note, for 10 years, my wife was a rehabilitation teacher at the Perkins School for the Blind in Watertown, Massachusetts, and the concern that this proposed legislation addresses on accessible voting systems is near and dear to my heart. To be upfront, this is really the initiation of my colleague, Representative Page, and he's just allowed me the honor to speak before this committee. To set the context for House Bill 67, allow me to briefly review the bill's predecessor from last year, House Bill 1264. In 2024, that bill was signed into law by former Governor Sununu on July 3rd. Prior to this law, accessible voting systems were in place only for state elections with the federal office on the ballot. These systems were not made available at polling locations for local elections. As a result, except for a couple of the communities that have their own accessible voting systems, individuals with disabilities were not universally afforded equal opportunities to vote privately and independently in local elections. This lack of provision is, in fact, a violation of the American with Disabilities Act and its implementing regulations. Last year, election law heard compelling testimony from the public as to some of the horrific discriminatory voting experiences endured by those voters who did not have these systems available. In fact, some New Hampshire communities have been sued for their failure to suitably provide accessible voting systems during election. So the current law that was enacted in July of 2024 now requires that each polling place have at least one accessible voting system for use in local elections through a pilot program with the Secretary of State's office. The Secretary's office must share the machines it has with cities and towns for the first 6 months of 2025 during town meeting sessions. This will allow municipalities to use the state's machines during a year when there are no other statewide elections. This pilot program was the result of several cooperative discussions with the Secretary of State's office, as well as with input from both the Disability Rights Center of New Hampshire and the New Hampshire Municipal Association. Now that that context has been laid out, we come to the bill before you, HB 67. My honorable colleague from Exeter, Representative Mark Page, and I are privileged to introduce this bipartisan bill. This bill simply seeks to remove the pilot program, or to move the pilot program into a permanent agreement beginning in July of 2025, and it makes the necessary funding provisions for the purchase of additional systems that might be necessary to enable an ongoing program. On behalf of the many stakeholders behind this effort, I kindly ask for this esteemed committee to support this bill. Thank you for your time, and I'll be glad to try and answer any questions you may have.
Other questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you, Representative Weary, and you'll get me your card. Secretary Scanlon, I have a card from you. Is that for this bill? Okay, I'm gonna, without objection, you didn't write the bill number down. I'm gonna write the bill number down on here. All right. I don't want to get caught forging records from you. So.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm David Scanlon, Secretary of State. Here to provide some information on this bill. As Representative Weary mentioned, the legislature required us to enter into a pilot program to make accessible voting equipment available to cities and towns for the upcoming March and subsequent town meetings. And we have done that on our end. We're making the hardware that's necessary available to the cities, to the towns. I don't believe there's any city elections except for maybe one. And we have a vendor that is able to program the devices for each individual local election. So from the state standpoint, we are ready. What I can tell you, though, that this process has been on the fast track, and we have quite a few towns that are expressing reservations about the speed of this and the cost, because there is a cost involved with the programming of these elections. And depending on the type of election, the programming could be significantly higher than others. For example, Senate Bill 2 towns have to put all of their warrant articles on the official ballot. And so all of that language has to be programmed into the devices to be used. That's a concern, and I know there's some representatives from the towns here, so you may hear more about that in a moment. Moving forward, however, we are aware that there are a number of physical accessible voting equipment devices that are available out there that may also work well with state elections, so that we could have one device in every polling place. The device would remain in the town and they would be used for every election. And we have been going through the process of vetting those systems. We've included the disabilities community as a part of that process. At some point, we'll be putting out a request for proposals on that. All of that does take some time. And whatever the device is, we want to have complete buy-in with the disabilities community, but we also want to have buy-in with the cities and towns when that happens. So the point that I'm coming to is that I think the track that we're on is a little too ambitious, and I would like to slow the process down just a little bit so that we make good decisions in this and not make a choice that we regret later because we're trying to do this too fast. I don't think we're talking about a lot of time, months rather than years, but I think that we need to really make sure that we take measured steps in this process to make sure that what we do is right for everybody that's involved in this process. And Aaron, do you want to add anything to that?
Thank you. Erin Hennessy, Deputy Secretary of State. So I think the bill has a implementation date or enacted date of this summer. And if it were to move to January 1st of 2026, I think we could better meet the requirements of the legislation. And I'll save all of my fiscal note comments for the Finance Committee.
We'd be happy to answer any questions.
Question. I was writing down those notes. Representative Lane.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Hennessy, sorry, I have a cold and I'm having a hard time talking. If we move out the date, the pilot program ends this summer. So there will be a 6-month gap. What would you propose for that 6-month gap?
Thank you for the question. For those cities that do not have their own devices currently, I believe our office could work with them depending on what device. I mean, there is a chance that we would have new devices by that time. But for those that don't have them, and if we don't have them by that time, we could work with them if they would like to use our devices. So similar to what's going on right now.
Follow up.
The reason I ask is because cities will be voting in November, and they may want to implement it in November, which comes in that gap period. So, okay.
Mr. Chair, if I could just give a little extra information on that. So our devices right now are kind of complicated and almost 10 years old. So the reason why the language of this bill would not work for our current devices is because of they're a bit outdated, and local election officials would have a very difficult time resetting them up and doing the programming piece of things, other than programming for a specific election. But the piece that our IT department has to go through to set it up for a new election each time.
Other questions from the committee? Yes, Representative Wood. Yeah, one more. There it is.
Sorry. Thank you for taking my question. I was just wondering, you mentioned the cost. What is the cost, the range? Some towns from the low end to the high end, just to put in perspective.
Thank you, Representative, for the question. So if you have one election and you have a small ballot size, it's $600 to program it. If you have multiple elections, for example, I heard from a small town this morning, they have a town ballot and then 2 separate school ballots. I believe their town ballot is small, so perhaps it'd still be $600, but for them to have 3 elections is $1,800.
Further questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next up, we're going to go into members of the general public. Reminder, if you'd like to speak on this bill, please fill out a pink card before we reach the end. Next up is going to be Fred Fournier. Welcome to election law. You got to press the button. There you go.
Yes, good morning, and thank you, Mr. Chairman and the committee. My name is Fred Fournier, and I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today in support of the accessible voting systems. Prior to 2017, I worked a full career, had 2 wonderful children, had grandchildren, and my life was on track. And I was coasting to retirement until the unexpected happened and I became legally blind. When I had to give up my driving abilities, turn in my license, and learn a new way of coping with day-to-day life. And during that process, I met some amazing people who were already in the blind community, who helped me to see that life didn't end when you became blind, and that technology was our friend. And the accessible voting systems is a result of today's technology. And living in Exeter, I've had the opportunity to use the accessible voting systems for local elections and federal elections, and it has helped me immensely to navigate a ballot just like the sighted people do. So it's been a huge benefit for me, and I want to ask for your support in helping this to move forward. And knowing that technology is our friend, I know that this is going to get even better the further it goes down the road. So thank you for your time, and if you have any questions or comments, I'd try my best to respond to that.
Questions from the committee? Representative Wood.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your question. Sounds to me that you're an expert on using this. Can you describe quickly what your experience is, and do you need any help at all during the voting process?
Yes, thank you for the question. Yes, initially the voting person comes in and enters the code to start the process. But once that's entered, I can navigate the system and navigate the ballots just as a sighted person would, stepping through each race or office, just like a regular ballot, and choose the candidates that are running for the office just by hitting the carriage return on the keyboard, and then progressing all the way through to the bottom of the ballot, where at that point I can review my selections to make sure they're what I chose. And if they are, I can choose to print the ballot, which is printed right next to me. And then I would take it to the counting machine and deposit it just like any other voter would.
Thank you.
Further questions from the committee? Hearing none, thank you. Next up is going to be Dana Trahan. Welcome to election law.
Thank you. Under. Good morning, Mr. Committee Chair and committee members. Thank you so very much for taking the time to listen to our testimonies. My name is Dana Trahan. I am also from Exeter, a resident there. I'm also a part of the Coalition of Blind and Vision Impaired Voters here in New Hampshire. And we've been working quite some time with the Secretary of State's office and with our local election workers so far as accessible voting, not only for state and federal elections, but now for town elections. I'm so very thankful for the passing last year of HB 1264. It's very exciting to know that there is going to be accessible voting in municipal elections for everyone throughout the state. It's great that we're joining the vast majority of states that already have that in place. Hoping so very much that this bill is able to pass as well so that things continue to progress in a positive motion. We're very excited to have it be that in March that many of us are going to be able to do so in town elections, but it's also going to take a little time for the general public, whether they're blind or vision impaired or fully sighted, to learn that this is even an option at the polling places. So I think in time, numbers will progress, and so hopefully it won't be a reflection if thousands of us aren't voting at the beginning of March, because it's a matter of people learning that the system exists and how it works. There's training videos out there and different things, but the more the word can spread, and maybe you can all share with your constituents a little bit as well. So it's really so important for us to be able to vote privately and independently. Before so, I needed to either have somebody read the ballot to me and mark my ballot for me. A little bit more with the system itself that Fred was sharing with you. You can either listen to it through headphones and then make your selections on the keyboard. And for people that have some vision, they can even vote with using the tablet by enlarging the size of the font on the tablet and just tapping. So it's a great tool for someone with a vision impairment, but also somebody that might have a hard time filling in those ovals, whether it be arthritis or problems with dexterity. I did include a written testimony that might say a little bit more than what I'm nervously saying now. But I am, again, so very glad for the passing of 1264. It's so important for all of us in New Hampshire to have the right to, or the ability to vote privately and independently. And I look forward to, hopefully extending the pilot program so there won't need to be a time where some people get to try it, but not everybody gets to try it. And is it available or isn't it available? So hopefully things will run smoothly. And if you have any questions or anything more I can share, please let me know.
Excellent. Any questions from the committee? Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next up is Andrew Harmon. It's to your left. Yeah.
Okay, excellent. My name is Andrew Harmon. I'm a resident of New Hampton, New Hampshire. I want to start by thanking the committee for all their hard work with passing 1264 last year. As someone who works as an accessibility tester, I understand the amount of work that must have gone into this and the concerns that may be about expanding the program. But I would also say that that is what the pilot program is for, and that extending it out will give us the chance to address any small quirks that might come up, because as the system currently exists, it works really, really easily, as you've heard from other people, for being able to complete a ballot. I also wanted to say that for the warrant article side, having lived in a town that does tend to have one that is both small and tends to have a lot of warrant articles, being able to use the One for All system really excites me because it will greatly reduce the amount of time that I have to spend moving through the warrant article, especially privately, since we are such a small town and have such a small voting place. So I have other testimony that I have with me and will be happy to pass along when I'm done, that may address that other side of it a little bit better than I am also nervously saying. And I am happy to take any questions or comments.
Thank you. And thank you for bringing up written testimony. Huge pet peeve of mine. And I appreciate the member of the public. If you have written testimony, please do not distribute it while you're speaking. It's a huge pet peeve of mine when members are trying to like handle paperwork. They should be focused on you. So thank you for holding on to that. We will definitely take that. But just for everybody else, he did the right thing. And that's what I would like is we want to focus on you. So don't introduce distractions for the members. And thank you for not doing that, even though you didn't know you did the right thing. All right, so we will take that. And do you have any questions from the committee? Okay, hearing none. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next up is Gene Shiner.
Oh,
Yes.
where do I hand this to?
Representative Lane will come and take it from you.
Okay, thank you.
Good morning.
There you go.
Is that better?
That's much better. Thank
Good.
you.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the Election Law Committee. My name is Jean Shiner, and I'm a resident of Exeter, another one of them. I'm a member of the Coalition of Blind and Vision Impaired Voters. First, I want to thank you for passing HB 1264 last year. This pilot project will help Granite Staters with disabilities to vote for the first time during their municipal elections. And this is very exciting, and it's a big milestone. I want to take a step back and give you a little information of my background and tell you about the Coalition of Blind and Vision Impaired Voters' long, hard work on voting accessibility. I am totally blind. Voting with a secret ballot has been a passion of mine for several decades. The coalition is a statewide group of consumers and agency representatives working on voting access for the past 9 years. We began working with the Secretary of State's office with the goal of filling out a ballot, placing it in the box along with the general public's ballots. At first, we could fill out the ballot using the One for All, but the ballot had to be placed in a separate box and counted separately. In 2018, I was able to fill out my ballot for the first time using the One for All, placing it in the box along with everyone else's. It was a feeling of great accomplishment. Along with working on having state and federal elections accessible regarding voting, the coalition also wanted towns and cities to have the same right. Up until the passing of HB 1264, Concord and Exeter were the only two places with accessible ballots for city and town elections. In Concord, a complaint was registered with the Department of Justice, and the city of Concord has to provide accessibility for their elections. Many of the visually impaired community in Exeter have worked on advocating for accessible voting for several years, and in March of 2023, Exeter's town ballots were accessible. It is fantastic that other blind and low vision voters statewide can take advantage of this opportunity for this year. On a more personal note, the general non-disabled public can walk into a booth without thought and vote. If there is no accessible voting system available, I cannot vote with a secret ballot. Before 2023, during town elections, I had to ask someone to read and fill out the ballot, and it was usually our town clerk, and we had 3 ballots in Exeter for our town meetings, so it was a lot of reading for her. Someone knew how I was voting. I don't have any vision. I don't have the option of using a magnifier if the ballot is not accessible. Using the tablet enables me to have my constitutional right to a private secret ballot. It's a great feeling. Words cannot express the empowerment I feel when I can vote and place my ballot into the box just like other non-disabled voters. So there is more work to be done. We need to make voting with an accessible ballot a permanent right, a permanent thing. I ask you to pass this bill, HB 67. I want everyone, including blind voters in this state, to have this right. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Will you be taking questions from the committee?
Yes, I can.
Are there questions from the committee? Hearing none, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next up is Randy Pierce from Future Insight.
Sorry.
There's a chair here.
Thank
Sorry.
you for tapping. There we go. And there's the button I'm going to find, or you've already done that for me, haven't you?
The button is on. The microphone is pointed to your left, so you'll need to reach to your left and grab it and turn it. There you go.
Okay. You know, simple accessibility, that button, right? And imagine if you didn't have the accessibility of that button, you wouldn't be able to hear people giving testimony. It's pretty dramatic. And similarly, you don't get to hear the voice of many disabled voters well beyond just the blind and visually impaired. Print disabilities of all types are also included. And just in the blind community, there are 28,000 people here in New Hampshire who could utilize that system. Now, part of the reason I want to speak to that is with full appreciation for how much tremendous progress we've made, thanks to your choice last year to make House Bill 1264 law. Now we're talking about, are we going to extend it? And one of the biggest challenges at Future Insight, we serve all of the population of New Hampshire. One of the biggest challenges we hear is they don't know what to expect when they go to vote. Sometimes the machine's there, sometimes it's not. And when you don't know if it's going to be there, you're intimidated to use it. And we don't want to make intimidation around voting. It's too important a right. Now, I appreciate and respect the reasons why there's some discussion from the Secretary and Deputy Secretary to delay. And those reasons may be sufficient, but let's talk about what that means. We say we're going to have a similar plan to the pilot to get there. I love that striving, and they've demonstrated they are willing to and trying to. But what has happened is that it's been federal law that this should be accessible, and it hasn't happened. So if we delay this, 2 things are going to happen. One, we're probably going to have a lot of municipal elections without that system in place. And here's the second, more powerful. After getting everybody's hopes up in the community, from now on, every time it's going to be there, what we're going to do is pull the rug right out from under them, and it won't be there for some people. And the intent may be there, but if it's not there, then people are going to say nothing's changed, and they're still not going to develop the consistency, and you're not going to get their votes. And I can tell you that the blind population we serve, and the majority of them, vast majority, 80%, are new to their visual impairment because it's happening later in life. And the reality is for them, they're already uncertain. They're already lacking the confidence. And you're going to take away the competence from them because you're not going to give them access to it unless you choose to say, we're going to find a way to pass it now. Is it fast? Yeah. Will it require extra work? Yes. But the delay means, just like if I don't push the button for this microphone, You're not going to hear the voters in your town in the way that you deserve, and more importantly, the way they deserve. I'm happy to take any questions. Obviously, I'm passionate as a consumer myself and as a person charged with helping to serve the 28,000 people in New Hampshire who are blind and visually impaired.
And thank you for your testimony, and it was great testimony. My first question, I need you to say who you are and where you live.
Sure, I'm very sorry for that. I'm Randy Pierce. I currently live in Canterbury, New Hampshire, though born in Nashua, grew up in Colebrook. I got the state surrounded.
No worries. Thank you for that. All right, now, are there questions from the committee? All right, seeing none, thank you so much. And like, it was great testimony. I didn't want to stop you. Like you came out swinging, and I loved it. I didn't want to hit you with the slow roll. So, thank you. All right, next up is Kaylee. Oh, you're gonna be the first last name I butcher this year. I promise you, it won't be the last name that I butcher. Estrafeshu. I wasn't even close. I appreciate it though. Do it one more time for me because I imagine you'll be back.
Efstradio.
Estradio.
Yeah, pretty phonetic.
Okay.
Thank you, Chairman and members of the House Election Law Committee. My name's Kaylee Efstradio. I'm a Durham voter and public policy fellow with Open Democracy. We're a nonpartisan nonprofit representing 3,600 voters across the state of New Hampshire. I'm submitting testimony today to support HB 67. New Hampshire places extraordinary value on community and voting, and we have to strive to make sure that town meetings are inclusive of all populations as well. As we have heard earlier today from the Secretary of State, their office has already issued a request for proposal to replace the existing accessible voting systems, and now is the time to ensure that they are available for local elections. Concord has already been sued for not having an accessible voting system during their local elections, and continuing not to provide these essential devices leaves the entire state wide open to a similarly embarrassing lawsuit. Implementing one-for-all voting systems into local and town elections would also be a wise preemptive move. The language demographics of several cities like Nashua and Manchester are quickly approaching the Voting Rights Act threshold of 10,000 citizens with limited English proficiency, which will mandate jurisdictions to provide ballots in that language. Incorporating language access to accessible voting systems would greatly ease this transition. Please vote ought to pass on HB 67 and support equitable voting access for all New Hampshire citizens. And I also have written testimony from my staff member Autumn, who could not be here today.
Excellent. And will you be taking questions from the committee?
Yes, if there
Are there questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you. If you could hand your testimony to Representative Guskowski, he'll ship it up to us. Next up is Joan Dargy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In the committee, I'm Joan Dargy, Town Clerk in Milford, also the President of the New Hampshire City and Town Clerks Association, and a member of the Legislative Committee. New Hampshire City and Town Clerks are in support of this bill, but I would also like to echo what the Secretary of State mentioned, in that it is on a very quick time frame to turn it around. And I believe an extension would be helpful. I've received calls from clerks from the smaller towns that $600 to $1,800 per election potentially is more than their entire election cost. With that said, we had a demonstration at the Secretary of State's office on 3 different machines, and that was the Democracy Live, ImageCast, and VotingWorks. If the language of this bill could somehow be changed to give the city and towns more, to allow them to make the decision, give them more of a decision in this, because we saw where if one town has the ImageCast machine, they could potentially use the accessible voting ImageCast machine or the VotingWorks. And in using the same machine that they're already using for the elections, the programming is less expensive. But we haven't had much time to really investigate that, whether it's good for everybody to have the same one with the high cost of programming, or potentially use the machines and get their own accessible voting equipment. I mean, as far as for this spring, the bulk of the city and towns will be doing the pilot with the Secretary of State's office. So the bulk of cities and towns are going to be able to use this. The Secretary of State mentioned that for November, they would work with the cities who have November elections or anybody that has an election after March to potentially continue the pilot. So I believe that the Secretary of State having that little more time to make a better decision on this and figure out how it's best going to work would be the best thing.
Okay. Will you be taking questions from the committee?
Yes.
I thought I saw you. You have to represent Lane.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for being here. Ms. Dargy, my question is, when these smaller towns or other cities or whatever, are they aware that this is federal law and that the reason that Exeter and Concord had this was they were threatened with a lawsuit?
Yes, and they are aware. The most comment that I got was that they don't have anybody that uses the current accessible voting system. So to get them in a position to spend $1,800 where someone may not access it, I guess that's where you're putting it on the city and town, potentially make it their decision. I mean, mostly everybody is in favor. I mean, everybody is in support of it. It's just looking at those smaller towns. And I think having the extended time to look at it may help figure out a less expensive way for them to do it.
Further questions from the committee? Hearing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Last up is Sarah Burke Cohen from New Hampshire Municipal Association.
Morning. Excuse me. Good morning. There is a voice in here someplace. My name is Sarah Burke Cohen, and I am a legislative advocate for the New Hampshire Municipal Association. As many of you know, the New Hampshire Municipal Association is a member organization made up of all the municipalities in the state of New Hampshire. I'm here today to testify in support of HB 67. You've heard testimony of the importance and necessity for accessible voting in a manner that allows an individual with a disability to have equal access to voting. I will not reiterate the testimony, but NHMA echoes the importance of the objective of this program. Excuse me, sorry. NHMA also supports the substance of this program, which it understands to be the supply and maintenance of the accessible voting system purchased using federal HAVA funds to the municipalities for local elections by the Secretary of State's office, which will ensure that every polling site has at least one system and that those systems are consistent throughout the state of New Hampshire. The municipalities will bear the cost of programming the accessible voting system for local elections, which, although is a cost, is substantially less than if the system had to be purchased by the municipalities individually. The municipalities will secure the system in a manner guided by the Secretary of State's office while it is in their possession. Following the local election, the system will return to the Secretary of State's office for maintenance and storage in the time periods between elections. Moving this successful pilot program to a permanent program through this legislation will benefit the state and ensure that it is in compliance with the federal ADA. We urge you to recommend this bill ought to pass. I'm open to questions.
Are there questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else wishing to speak on this bill? Seeing none, we're going to do some quick counting here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 9 people signed up on the blue sheet in support of the bill that did not speak. Friendly reminder, the blue sheet is for if you are here and you wish to have your opinion known but not speak. So if you're speaking, don't sign the blue sheet. We get that with the pink card. So that's why I had to do some math there. And then online, it was pretty one-sided. 3 opposed, 1 neutral, and 111 in support. So with that, we will close the public hearing for House Bill 67 and open the public hearing for House Bill 261 relative to election audits. And I think Representative Weir, you're frequent flying us today.
My pleasure. So thank you, Mr. Chair and honorable committee members. For the record, my name is Robert Wary. I have the privilege of representing Hillsborough, District 13, the great town of Hudson. As you all are aware of, audits are an important practice to do in financial matters and inventories throughout supply chains and for election integrity. The legislature, with the approval from the governor, has established audits for this state in our attempt to strive to ensure election integrity. And in the mid-November timeframe, I participated in some recounts that were performed, and we did the audits prior to the recounts and then did the recounts. And logistically, this has some problems. Typically during recounts, you have teams of lawyers and observers as well as the candidates, and they're kept hanging around, and anybody who has to be paid for that time when essentially they're not doing anything. So what this bill addresses is it simply moves the audits to after the recount portion, and then that way that allows the logistics of getting the recounts done immediately and moving that large team of people participating in each recount to a time earlier, and then the audits can be precisely done after the recounts are completed. So, and the wording is relatively simple. It just says after and after the completion of a recount. So the audits would be done after the recount. Are there any questions?
Are there any questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you. Only one other person signed up to speak for this is Deputy Secretary of State Aaron Hennessy. Representative Guscasi, can you grab me that blue sheet again?
Good morning again, Erin Hennessy, Deputy Secretary of State. I just want to let you know that our office is in favor of this legislation. In the November recounts, we didn't have as many as we could have had. We had, I believe, 9. One ended up getting called off, so just 8 in total. But for up to 10 state representative races, we have to do top of the ticket recount audits. And currently, the law requires us to do them before the recounts. If we were to have as many recounts as we had in, say, 2022, we may not have been able to have finished the recounts in time to call you folks to take your seats for the first Wednesday in December to be sworn in. So we are in support of this legislation that allows us to move the audits until after the recounts. Happy to take questions.
Questions from the committee? Seeing none,
Thank
you. You see, I scheduled the quick bill behind the long bill. Just thinking. Anyone else wishing to speak to this bill? Thank you. Seeing none. There was no one signed up on the blue sheet, and online there was 5 in support and 3 opposed. With that, we will be closing the public hearing on House Bill 261 and opening the public hearing for House Bill 340 FN relative to electioneering by public employees. And Representative Mazur is recognized for the purpose of introduction.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. Again, my name is Lisa Mazur. I represent Hillsborough District 44. I am here to introduce and support HB 340 FN, which expands our current electioneering law. This bill is important so that public employees who we pay with our tax dollars remain neutral during state and local elections and serve all citizens, regardless of political affiliation. This past election, employees of our town's public library put together a politically biased and leading questionnaire to candidates. They claimed that most of the questions were provided by the community. After filing a right to know request, that was found to not be the case. They had gathered 2 questions from the community and the rest from other publicly funded employees who work for our town. A library staff member even emailed the library director asking if any feedback was received about suggested candidate questions. The library director responded saying, and this is quote, "None of the questions are stellar, and some of them will need to be rewritten if we want to use them." End quote. She also said the library staff would select all final questions. Nothing in the current law stops these public employees from putting out a questionnaire that includes a question like, "Why is Representative so-and-so a bad candidate for office?" This sets a bad precedent that seems to allow for electioneering that could lead to unequal access to resources or information, favoring incumbents or specific candidates, which goes against principles of fairness and equal opportunity. These public employees also help in our town organize political events. Public employees should not be using government property, equipment, or their time that we pay for these kinds of activities. Why? We have other volunteer-led organizations that could do the same thing. Voters can educate themselves about their candidates without this kind of involvement. Electioneering by public employees can undermine public trust in government institutions, as it may appear that taxpayer resources are being used to influence elections unfairly. I ask you to vote for this good bill that expands the law to prevent public employees from electioneering. Thank you.
Will you be taking questions, Representative Mazer?
I'll try.
Okay. Are there questions from the committee? Representative Muirhead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks for taking my question. My understanding is that this bill simply adds the following sections to the existing law. Sections 3A, B, C are being added to the law. Everything else is the same. And section 6A, B, C, D. So it's the subheadings A, B, C, 3A, B, C, and 6 A, B, C, D. By the way, 6 should be 4. It's a typo in the bill, but I'm going to call it 6 because it's labeled 6 in the bill correct right now. And so it's just those subheadings, A, B, C, and A, B, C, D, that are being added. Is that correct?
Yes, thank you for the question. Specifically referencing surveys and organizing political activities. I mean, there's a little bit more to that, but that was the main gist of the expansion.
Can I have a follow-up question?
Sure.
Yeah, and thank you for taking another question. So section 3 ABC introduces examples of electioneering that were not in the current law. These examples are not exhaustive. There could be many other examples of electioneering that these examples don't contain. So they're just sort of a kind of adding a, for example, ABC to the law, where right now the law doesn't have that, for example, ABC. And section C includes organizing surveys that are political. That just leads to a specific question, which is if University of New Hampshire professors are considered public employees, and if a University of New Hampshire professor participates in polling, like doing a UNH poll of New Hampshire public opinion, maybe about an issue or a race, would that kind of polling undertaken by UNH employees be forbidden by this example in the law?
Well, thank you. I believe currently, public employees, correct me if I'm wrong, can facilitate these kinds of activities, but the problem is the influencing of the political activities which in our town is happening a lot.
One more representative, and please keep the question a little shorter if you don't mind, because we are executing this bill today. That's my point. So
I understand. I think I'm
you'll have-
raising profound and severe problems with the bill that need to be aired, but I'll pass on this follow-up question. I don't think I've wasted the committee's time so far. Thank you.
Representative Howard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for taking my question. So I understand in your testimony that you brought up a situation that occurred this past fall with the Goffstown Library. And I understand that there was a lawsuit that had occurred with that situation. What was the outcome of that lawsuit?
It was basically that it wasn't in in the lawsuit, it wasn't part of their purview, so that it should go to, the AG or whatever. So, yeah.
It wasn't in whose purview? Sorry.
Part of the court system, because it was in the court system.
Further questions? Representative Lane. Representative Newsom.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for taking the question. Do you find it confusing if two different statutes use the term electioneering and have different definitions?
I'm not sure what you're referencing.
You have a follow-up? Were you requesting a follow-up, Representative Newsom?
Follow up to add clarification to the question.
Yes.
The bill in front of us affects electioneering for public employees in 659:44A. 659:44 prohibits electioneering by election officials, which uses the same definition today that's not being changed. So is there a reason why you seek to change one definition of electioneering while leaving the previous one the same?
Because this is specific to public employees that we pay with our tax dollars, and the those employees that got involved in our previous election, and they're planning on doing it again. Is our library, is our towns, is our parks and rec department, etc. So those are all people that we pay tax dollars, and their time can be utilized elsewhere, not putting out information that's influencing our elections. Voters are adults. They can do this on their own. We do not need this outside piece to come in, and their questions, this 12-point survey or whatever that they put out, was very biased, very leading, and there's nothing in our current law that prevents that, and that's what this is. This expands that, so this cannot happen again.
Further questions, Representative Lane?
Along what Representative Muirhead, I think, was going to, it seems that we're defining electioneer in two places, and you're trying to expand it by example in 44-A. Is that really necessary when in 44 it says specifically designed to influence the vote of a voter on any question or office?
You would think that would be clear, but in our case it is not. So we were specifically asked, the law needs to be clarified so that they cannot do this anymore, because it makes it very unfair in our town to certain people who are running for office. Of the information that they put out regularly is very biased, and makes it so that candidates do not want to participate because of that, and that shouldn't be.
Can I have a follow-up?
Yes, this follow-up.
And thank you. Was in the lawsuit, did the judge say anything about the definition of electioneer?
I can't comment to the lawsuit. I wasn't a part of that, so I don't have a comment on that.
Further questions from the committee? Representative Purdom O'Brien.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this would not prohibit communities from using a room in the library, like a meeting room, or prohibit town officials from making a public area available for members of the public to ask questions of candidates, maybe a candidate forum where members of the public just simply ask questions at that meeting?
Yes, thank you for that question. And that does happen currently. So our town Lions Club, we open up, there's a room that they open up for a candidates night. And that's the way it should be. That is a volunteer-led organization and they have that right to do that.
Further questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you, Representative. Yes, Representative Gilmore.
Thank you. I'm having a little problem with Roman 3 and subsection B. So it seems like, as I'm reading this, you're saying that no public employee could make any public statement against any candidate.
Correct. Thank you. Yes, as serving in their role as a public employee. What they do personally is their business on their side, but if they are, it's during work time and they are on, let's say, the Parks and Rep page, any part of anything that they're putting out publicly in their role as a public employee.
Okay, when they're on the clock as a public employee.
Yes.
So, okay, thank you.
Yep.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Representative Mazer. Next up is Deputy Secretary of State Aaron Hennessy.
Good morning again, Erin Hennessy, Deputy Secretary of State. Our department does not take a position on this bill, but I would point out that in 652, under the general provisions of the election laws, it does have a definition for electioneer. So I would hope that that would be just to make sure for the enforcement aspects of this and for any questions our department gets, that it's just clear on what the definition of electioneering is actually. That's it. Happy to take questions.
Questions from the committee? Representative Gilmore, can you turn your mic off?
Oh,
thanks. That's just avoiding a problem in the future, if you know what I mean. And Representative Muirhead, also same thing for you. Would you like to turn your mic off? There you go. All right. Any questions for the Secretary of State? Seeing none, thank you. I almost called Representative Hennessy. I apologize. Deputy Secretary of State Hennessy. Next up is Dave Nelson from the town of Derry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and through you to the members. My name is Dave Nelson. I am the Derry Town Moderator. I have a problem with potential unintended consequences with the new section Roman 3 little c, which prohibits any town or other municipal public employee from participating in specifically forums. The town of Derry has a long history of running candidate forums, and typically those are moderated by either the town moderator or school district moderator as appropriate. All the questions come from members of the audience, and the event is live streamed over the town's community access cable TV network. Obviously, getting people to attend these things is important, and I just want to make sure that there will not be a dampening effect on town employees who help organize this. For example, the IT department that lists the date and time of the event on the town website without advocating for any position or candidate, or the town community access media people who come and bring their cameras and film and transmit the proceedings live. Those folks are town employees. They are acting within the scope of their official duties, but they are assisting in coordinating a forum. And if this can be interpreted to make them concerned or leery about continuing that, I would like to see an amendment to clarify that concern on my part. I'll answer any questions.
Okay. Are there questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you. Next up is Doris O'Hennessy from Nashua.
Good morning, Chairman Barry and members of the committee. I'm Doris Hohensee, a former school board member from Nashua. In 2009, I filed 2 right-to-know requests asking for union emails sent through the Nashua School District Network for the last 2 Mondays prior to the municipal election From these emails, I found that the American Federation of Teachers, or ATF, Teachers Union president initiated an email to his union leaders with election information, including a link to the Nashua Teachers Union PAC called COPE. Each of these union leaders then, he sent it out to all the different schools, like 20 or a couple dozen. And each of these union leaders forwarded this email to union members in the respective schools. Nashua has 17 schools. The teachers union president represents 2,000 employees in the Nashua School District. A union member also complained to me as a sitting board member that she was given political flyers in a union meeting held in school buildings, which I forwarded to the AG's office. The school board attorney, Attorney Tom Clausen, affirmed that it was electioneering and told me to save all the information as I filed a complaint with the New Hampshire AG's office. He indicated that it was more than enough to go to the PELRB, the Labor Relations Board, for unfair practices. I didn't get into that with him at the time. However, the AG's office declared there was no electioneering because the union president was not a district employee. Nashua has an unusual situation where the union president has a memo of understanding in the union contract with the district guaranteeing him a salary, benefits, step increases, payments to the state pension fund, and increases in his position of seniority among union members. In return, the union repays the district these funds, and apparently this MOU allowed him to electioneer at will. I asked the AG's office to reconsider, sending him a chart of all the emails of all the union members as they were district employees. They were using district computers, district networks during school hours, according to the date and time stamps on their respective emails, as they forwarded the same election material from the union president to their respective union members. And again, the AG's office found no electioneering. My concern is not only for identifying and prosecuting electioneering, but making sure there's a suitable deterrent or punishment in place. Electioneering results in a distortion of our election outcomes, compromising taxpayers for 4 years in our school district. The employees involved should be removed from the district as they've undermined our election, removing unfavorable candidates from office. I just wanted to point out that our union also in the past has paid union members $150, which requires the union members to stand at the polls holding signs, Republicans and Democrats alike. They don't file their donation, like their expenses. If they union donates to certain candidates, they don't file that with the city. It's a city ordinance, and the AG doesn't care. They haven't done that for decades. So we're kind of in a black hole in Nashua, and any help would be appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. Will you be taking questions, Ms. Hennessy?
Certainly.
Are there questions from the committee? Yes, Representative Weary.
So your request to the AG concerned the president of the union, is that correct?
It concerned electioneering of the whole group.
Of the whole group. So
He identified it as just the president. I asked for reconsideration, gave him a chart. I can give you all this information where I had the names of all the district employees, the time, date stamp, and what they sent.
follow up.
Follow up.
So I could see where actually the president, not being a district member, would be immune from the electioneering charges, but everyone else who then distributed the notifications would be subject to the electioneering provisions. Is that how you would see it?
Yes. That's how the attorney Clausen, who was our school board attorney, represented it when he saw it. He said it was open and shut, but the attorney general didn't, and I wasn't about to file a lawsuit against the attorney general. I had other problems as a school board member.
Further questions from the committee? Hearing none, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next up is Sarah Burke Cohen with the New Hampshire Municipal Association.
Hello, my name is Sarah Burke Cohen, and I am a legislative advocate for the New Hampshire Municipal Association. NHMA is here to oppose HB 340. HB 340 is overly broad and vague. For example, making public statements in favor of or against any candidate, political party, or measure seems to indicate that a public employee would be barred from organic discussions about candidates or political parties that may take place during any given workday. NHMA finds the language in this bill would create such confusion that a public employee may not know what speech is prohibited. It would create a chilling effect in which a public employee would be fearful that any speech, even speech protected by the First Amendment, was prohibited, and so not engage in it at all. For these reasons, NHMA opposes HB 340 and urges you to do the same. I'm open to questions.
Are there questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Last up that I have for pink card is Brian Hawkins from the NEA, New Hampshire.
Thank you, Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. For the record, Brian Hawkins, representing NEA New Hampshire. We represent numerous local unions across the state in K-12 and some in higher education as well. And we're here in opposition to HB 340, which we see as a large expansion of the electioneering statute. Certainly support the statute as it stands, but this vastly expands 659-44A. And a couple of things I'll just, so I don't repeat previous testimony. In section 1, Roman 3, one of the changes that is made to the current statute is the addition of "in any way designed" instead of "specifically designed," and then also adds "or having the effect of influencing." And so that is a change. I think it was already raised in earlier testimony about the addition of the ABCD and the subsequent sections after that. But you know, that seems to capture a lot more than the current statute, at least. You know, so a question would be: so now someone can say, well, you know, Brian said in hallway, whatever, that I internalized to mean something else, which is not something that I meant, and it had the effect of influencing a vote. So that is a concern that this would lead to inadvertent issues there. And then this is significant because, of course, the effect of this is that someone could be charged with a misdemeanor. And so I think that's the central concern that I would just add to what was already brought up, that this is vague and subjective and would be difficult to enforce.
Will you be taking questions?
I'm happy to take any questions if I can answer them.
Are there questions from the committee? Hearing none, thank you. I don't have anyone else signed up to speak on pink cards. Does anyone else wish to speak?
Thank you.
Seeing none, the blue sheet, both people on the blue sheet spoke, so technically no one on the blue sheet. And then online, there were 5 in support, 5 opposed. And with that, I will close the public hearing for House Bill 340. And we have to stand for a minute. We did it. We got back on schedule. So I'll see you guys at 11:30. Okay.
I think we're okay.
It is now 11:30. Thank you
I
for.
just didn't fill out a pink
No worries. He will get you a pink card in a second. Since the pink cards go to you, it kind of works out. All right. So we're going to open up the public hearing on House Bill 160 relative to the contents of the pre-election certificate, and we're going to recognize Representative Burnham for the purpose of introduction. Just so you guys know, I'm going to permit Representative Burnham to rejoin the committee after she testifies. She won't participate in the hearing for asking questions, but she'll continue her clerk duties. So I'm gonna, unless somebody wants to do that, I'm gonna go ahead and let her do her job, and I don't think there's gonna be an objection to that. But she won't participate in the hearing. Okay. I had to beg her to do the job to begin with, so I don't think there's people shooting to do the job. It'd be so appropriate. I mean, just for old time's sakes. No, it's okay. It's okay. Just for old time's sakes, just for old time's sakes. For those wondering what the joke is there, Representative Grill was our very good clerk from last term, and we miss her dearly. Representative Burnham, make sure you get your mic on, but we are ready to go.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, members of the committee. As the prime sponsor of HB 160 relative to the contents of pre-election certificate, I believe that all ballots matter, and this bill provides tabulation of absentee ballots for pre-election through Election Day accountability. Just as official election ballots are counted before elections and during Election Day, either as spoiled ballots, casted ballots, or remaining ballots, so should absentee ballots be required to be counted before they are distributed to voters. Should they become spoiled, as well as any that are remaining absentee ballots at the close of Election Day. Currently, absentee ballots are only counted when cast on Election Day as an absentee ballot or as a substitute for an official ballot. Just as in RSA 658.31, the counting of ballots prior to the opening of polls, official ballots are counted before and after elections. So too, the absentee ballots should be counted before and after elections. By treating our absentee ballots with better accountability, this small but yet important tabulation process will provide more confidence in our election ballot process. Many clerks are already keeping track of absentee ballots as they enter and flow through their office for personal tracking. Therefore, this process may be easily implemented and provide the public with better knowledge of the number of absentee ballots received and remaining at the end of Election Day. Thank you for your consideration in passing this bill.
Okay, will you be taking questions from the committee, Representative?
Yes.
Are there questions from the committee? Okay, I saw Representative C first, but Ranking Member, I will come to you.
Thank you for taking my question. In here, it takes away the reference to the total number of ballots received and just talks about the absentee ballots. Can you explain why we don't want to know about the total ballots?
Yes, so that is actually counted on the I believe it's the post-election certificate on the day of elections. Those ballots are counted on that portion. So there's two sides, like a balance sheet. And absentee ballots are only recognized on the second side, which is the ones that are received in the machine or if they're used as an official ballot. As for the official ballots for Election Day, those are counted before, once the clerk receives them. And then any remaining ones are also counted at the end and accounted for. We're just looking at having the same process done for absentee ballots.
Thank you.
Representative Lane.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and Representative Burnham, thanks for taking the question. When I read the bill, it talks about a pre-election certificate. And then in the calculation, you're having the number of absentee ballots spoiled and the number of absentee ballots remaining at the close of polls. How can you do this before the election?
So I'm sorry.
Okay,
Yes.
yes.
So that's the challenging part, but the clerk does have that sheet. for elections, and they'll know at the end of elections and be able to write that same number on the pre-election certificate, just to kind of keep order of the absentee ballot on the pre-election certificate. But that number is staying with the absentee ballot versus on the election day certificate. It's kind of split up due to a bill that did that.
One more question.
Follow up.
So I guess this isn't a question, but I suggest you might want to change the name of the certificate because it's no longer just pre-election if we go this route. But also, there's another bill coming at us with some changes like this. I think it's HB 158, and I haven't read it carefully. Are you familiar with that bill, and are they similar, or do you know?
I am not familiar with that one.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Further questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you, Representative Burnham, and please rejoin us because you do not want to see my notes. Next up is Deputy Secretary of State Erin Hennessy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Erin Hennessy, Deputy Secretary of State. I have a few comments on this legislation. I think it does a few good things, and that would be easier for some of the clerks and moderators' work. But I do want to point out, and I will be handing out the pre-election and the post-election certificates after I speak per Mr. Chair's direction. But the legislature changed, I believe it was 2 years ago now, the name of these certificates. One is the pre-election certificate and one is the post-election certificate. And from my perspective on looking at these certificates, the naming of these certificates was very helpful because it helped moderators and clerks understand when they had to be done. The pre-election certificate specifically requires that the clerk and the moderator both certify that before the election begins, they have hand counted, or they have counted, it doesn't say hand count in the law, but they have counted the number of official ballots that they have received from the Secretary of State, and they've examined them so they know that, oh, these are the actual Ward 1's ballots and not Ward 2 ballots. So they don't start off the day with the incorrect ballots, and they know how many they have. That information is also useful for the moderator to use in the post-election certificate. The pre-election certificate also requires, if you are an electronic ballot counting town, the clerk and the moderator to certify that they have looked for evidence that the device has been tested prior to the election, and to put the serial numbers of those devices in and to sign their name. So it does two important things: the number of official ballots and the number and the electronic ballot counting devices prior to putting them into place at an election. I think if the language of this bill were to require post-election information on the certificate, it would get very confusing to moderators and clerks because they would be coming back to the certificate twice. I think perhaps a separate certificate might be in order, or a separate worksheet. In general, the moderators don't have control over the absentee ballots in the clerk's office, so it may be a clerk function. While I'm not advocating for that, I would say that if you were to do that, there are several data points that you are missing, and that is the number of absentee ballots to use as official election day ballots. So if a polling place runs out of official election day ballots, they sometimes have to use absentee ballots. The number of absentee ballots not returned by a voter, the number of rejected absentee ballots that have not been cast, the number of duplicate mailings. Unfortunately, as time goes on, we've seen that sometimes voters do not get their absentee ballot they've requested. We occasionally in our office receive absentee ballots back months and months later that for some reason were not delivered to a voter. Or if, in the example of this past fall when there were severe storms, sometimes mail just got destroyed. So there's instances where somebody needs more than one ballot mailed to them because they didn't receive it. So this language here doesn't account for that. It also doesn't account for when an absentee ballot is used on election day to a voter who's unable to come into a polling location. They are a curbside voter, and the law does allow for an absentee ballot to be hand delivered to that person and collected by the moderator. So that's some information that is missing from this in order to track absentee ballots. One of the things I will say, and on page 2, lines 4 through 11, this would effectively remove the requirement of the ballots cast information that is currently on the return of votes form. So right now, when a clerk fills in the return of votes form with the election information, the ballot, the number of votes for each candidate, the number of undervotes, and the number of overvotes, they also are filling in the ballots cast information. So this would remove that information from the return of votes. And it would just be on the post-election certificate, which it already is, with the exception of the federal office only ballots. We don't break those out on the post-election certificate, but we could do that very easily. So that is one thing that a clerk or a moderator might be excited to see, that they don't have to fill this information in multiple times. I would ask that because this information is being taken off the return of votes form, right now the post-election certificate, the law allows the moderators to complete this within 48 hours of the close of an election, unless the Secretary of State demands that it be done at a different time. And I think that because the post-election certificate is the actual reconciliation for an election, that this certificate should be done on election night. The ballots cast information is there. The comparison of ballots cast information is there. The sum of all votes is there. And the voter participation, which is the number of voters checking in on the checklist as having received a ballot that day. So that is a very important part of election night reconciliation. And so the moderator has this information already on election night. So it would be helpful if this information were to be due on election night and returned by the clerk, just like in on lines 11 through 13. Separate information, the pre-election is already returned on election, after the election, by the clerk to our office. Happy to take any questions. And I'm going to hand these out so you can see what the pre-election and post-election certificate already require. And I will say that some of the other requirements are already on our post-election certificate.
Will you be taking questions from the committee?
Yes.
Yes, sorry, Representative Lane. Yeah.
I seem to be the questioner of the day. Thank you for taking the question. And just so that because I've never actually filled these sheets out, but if you wanted to account for absentee ballots, is the information included in the existing forms or not?
Not currently, because of all of the moving parts with absentee ballots. The clerks do keep track of who has been issued an absentee ballot. And that information is entered into our statewide voter registration system. And there can be some updates to that on election day. There are some clerks here behind me that would be happy to talk about that, but I'm sure if asked. So I don't want to speak for them. But so the SVRS reporting that is printed out prior to an election is a piece of that information, plus all the other things that I just talked about that happen on election day to adjust that. Yeah.
Further questions from the committee? Representative C.
Thank you for taking my question. Are clerks allowed to take ballots to, like, a local nursing home or something like that, and assist them with doing the absentee ballots, or do they have to actually be mailed?
Thank you for the question. Yes, their clerks are allowed to do that before election day.
Follow up?
Follow
up. So in this case, where it just says the number of absentee ballots mailed to voters, should that also include or provided or something to that effect?
Thank you for the question. That's a good observation, because sometimes a voter may come into the office and just be perhaps delivered and versus mailed.
Thank you.
Further questions from the committee? Hearing none. Thank you, Deputy Secretary. Next up, the Honorable Joan Hamlet.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Joan Hamblett. I am a prior member of the Election Law Committee, and I'm currently the moderator of Portsmouth Ward 3. So my comments are really just about Section 1 of this bill regarding the pre-election certificate. This bill misses the point of the pre-election certificate. The pre-election certificate does two things. It certifies that the electronic ballot counting devices and memory devices were tested before the election began, and that the device seals were present, recorded, and not tampered with. And number two, it certifies that the official blank ballots that were delivered to the polling place were examined and counted before the election began. This important number of blank ballots is used at the end of Election Day to calculate the actual number of ballots that were cast by the Election Day voters. This is a critical part of the reconciliation that is performed after the polls close. Absentee ballots have nothing to do with the pre-election certificate. Absentee ballots are carefully recorded by the city or town clerk on the state absentee ballot list, which is the SVRS list. This list provides all the data the moderator needs to account for all the absentee ballots cast on Election Day. Every single absentee ballot submitted by voters is accounted for. There is no reason to complicate the pre-election certificate with the absentee ballot records that have already been meticulously recorded on the state absentee ballot list. If you are concerned that an absentee ballot might be used fraudulently, how would that happen? For example, if someone tampers with and submits another person's absentee ballot, it would likely be caught in the multi-step verification process that follows. The city or town clerk, the moderator, and the ballot clerks all take steps to verify that each absentee ballot is legitimate. In addition, voters may observe the process and may challenge any absentee ballot. These protections ensure that there is no significant absentee ballot fraud in New Hampshire. Therefore, there are multiple reasons why this bill is not needed. Please vote HB 160 in expedient to legislate. And I do have some written testimony I can submit, and I'll take questions.
Thank you. Are there questions from the committee? Hearing none, thank you. And once again, it's always good seeing you.
Thank you very much. Mr.
Next
Chair.
up, Joan Dargy. Oh, that's fine. All right, so we'll. I do need you to get on the blue sheet then, since you're not speaking, just for the sake. And then I guess we'll go to Daniel Healy. Sorry.
Good morning, Dan Healy, Nashua City Clerk, and I guess now speaking on behalf of the New Hampshire City and Town Clerks Association. Most of the points that I was going to come up and discuss have already been brought up. The having a number at close of polls on the pre-election certificate doesn't make too much sense. But one of the points that was not brought up yet that I wanted to hit on was that for absentee ballots, the military oversees the UOCAVAs. We email those out, and I just want to make sure that that's kind of accounted for if you're doing some type of election absentee inventory. We get an email ballot from the Secretary of State's office that we can email out if these particular voters request it that way. So I currently now do inventory my ballots when we get them from the Secretary of State. Say they said they sent us 1,000, I count them to make sure that we have 1,000. We bundle them up, into hundreds. If you run out on election day, you can use those following a procedure. So I do currently already inventory the ballots, but then you got to take into account these other factors of the UOCAVA ballots that are emailed out. So I just want to make sure that that's on the committee's radar. All the other things I believe have already been discussed. A few kind of concerns that we had regarding the pre-election versus post-election and where the numbers are actually accounted for. So I don't want to just rehash that, but I'd be open to any questions.
Other questions from the committee? Hearing none, thank you. And then last up is Mr. Dave Nelson from Derry. And Representative Gusowski, if you could grab the blue sheet for me for this bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and through you to the members. I am Dave Nelson, the Derry Town Moderator. I want to reiterate and echo and support all of the comments that have been given so far, and just summarize that I think it would make administration of elections very difficult for the moderator and as well for the clerk if the number of absentee ballots spoiled and the number of absentee ballots remaining at the close of the polls were on the pre-election certificate, because that is typically completed and signed well before the election. If somebody wanted to move that to the post-election certificate, that would be perhaps a wonderful thing, but it does not belong on the pre-election certificate. Thank you. Any questions?
Questions from the committee? All right, seeing none, thank you. With that, I have no one else signed up to speak. On the blue sheet, there were 2 people signed in opposed that did not speak. And then online, there were 3 in support and 7 opposed. With that, I'm closing the public hearing on House Bill 160. Representative Lane, are you good to go into executive session? I know it's noticed, but I'm just asking as a courtesy.
I think we need to recess, given that we just finished the public hearings and
Would you
we
like?
need to recess for caucus.
How long would you like?
I don't know. Do you want to do lunch or what time do you have to get out of here?
I need to be out of here at like 12:50. I need to be out of here 12:45ish. So I wasn't planning on going to lunch. But if you'd like to recess, that's fine.
Yeah, let's recess.
Can you 20 minutes? Would that be enough?
Well, we'll see. We'll
All right.
try to make it.
Okay. So let's return at math 12:15. So I'll see you guys back at 12:15. All right. The Democrats will be in room 403. Representative Lane, hold on before you go. As a courtesy, let me give you copies of this amendment. Republicans will go to 300. I didn't count it up, but I've got enough. But if you need more, let me know. And for submitted written testimony, I'm going to organize it at my desk. So if you want copies of what was submitted that you didn't get around, because I don't like to go around, just come and let me know and I'll get it for you. All right. All right. And we'll see everybody at 12:15. Okay, we're going. Is it 12:15? Yep. Okay. All right. Gonna gavel in executive session for the House Election Law Committee. And hold on, my calendar got buried. Where's my? Well, I need. There we go. That's what I need. Okay. So we'll start off election law the right way. We're going to open up the executive session on House Bill 67 FNA relative to agreements with the Secretary of State for the use of accessible voting machines. Representative Weary is recognized for a motion.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to move that the bill ought to pass.
There's a motion of ought to pass. Representative Lane is seconding.
Yes.
All right. Representative Weary, would you wish to speak to your motion?
Yes. So the pilot program goes through the mid portion of this year. In the second half of this year, it's my understanding that there are approximately 11 city elections that will occur. And some of the concerns about towns not being prepared and delaying the enactment of this to the 1st of January for 2026 seems to me to be not necessary, not required in this instance. I think it's important that we really protect. I mean, Governor Ayotte talked about protecting our most vulnerable during her inaugural address. And if we're not protecting our most vulnerable on election days, then we're not serving our citizens properly. So I think we really need to move forward with this. There's not an undue burden that this is creating in the second half of this year. And then as proposed, the towns and would have rather full enactment in 2026 for their March elections then. And this, I think, gives them ample time to prepare for that. So for those reasons, I believe that it's prudent for this committee to move forward with this bill and really protect our vulnerable voters at this time. Thank you.
Further discussion on the bill? Representative Prudhomme O'Brien.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I agree with all of that, but I think we all remember when last term someone with a vision disability talked about feeling like they did not have a private vote because of the way things had been. I want to keep protecting the right to a private vote for all citizens. And I think we heard some testimony today that told us about how important that is to that community. And we should do everything possible, despite some of the challenges that the Secretary of State's office has talked about. We should just keep going forward with this and protect that community above everything else. Thank you.
Further comments on the bill? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, are you ready? The motion is ought to pass. And the clerk will call, just say, because we don't have my vice chair, I'm going to go first. Normally I would go last, but today I'm going first. So, and it's the worst first day ever where nothing will be like this again, hopefully. The clerk will call the roll.
Chairman Barry,
Chair votes yes.
Representative Prudhomme O'Brien,
Yes.
Representative Burnham, yes. Representative Wary,
Yes.
Representative Wood,
Yes.
Representative Harvey Bolia. Did I get that right? I have declared a conflict. Okay.
Yes, she declared.
Thank you. Where am I? Representative C,
Yes.
Representative Gozowski,
Yes.
Representative Toner,
Yes.
Representative Lane,
Yes.
Representative Ward,
Yes.
Representative Gilmore,
Yes.
Representative Muirhead,
Yes.
Representative Grill,
Yes.
Representative Wilhelm,
Yes.
Representative Newsom,
Yes.
Representative Howard.
Yes.
Okay, so
Oh,
did I miss one?
You missed Quayle, which is now Mazer.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Representative Mazer.
yes.
Okay.
Okay, so it's 18.
17.
17 yet.
Okay, with that, the motion of ought to pass passes 17-0. Representative Harley Bollier declared a conflict with the clerk's office and did not participate. Is there any objection to this bill being placed onto the consent calendar? Oh, it has a fiscal note, so it does not matter. It does not get a consent calendar. So never mind. Representative Weary, would you be responsible for the report?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Okay. And that's that. Okay, first one, best one. All right, with that, I'm going to close the executive session for House Bill 67. And we will open up the executive session for House Bill 160. Representative Burnham, you are recognized for a motion.
I'm sorry. I'm a little,
It's okay.
okay.
Pass 160.
Yes. Motion to ought to pass 160.
Representative Harley Bollier seconds the motion. We're now on discussion of the motion of ought to pass on House Bill 160. Is there discussion on the bill? If we're on discussion of the bill, so yes, if you'd like to be recognized, Representative Lane's recognized.
I think given the testimony that we heard on the many flaws of this bill, I think if we're going to consider it, we should at least give Representative Burnham time to make the changes that were almost unanimously proposed. Because to dump this over on the moderators as it is against the advice of the clerks, the Municipal Association, and the Secretary of State.
Further discussion on the bill? Representative Burnham, would you speak to your motion?
I'm willing to do that if that is okay. If that's
Yep, that's fine. We can recess the bill if you'd like, because we haven't started the voting process.
Okay.
So I will recess House Bill 160. When we come back from 160, the motion of ought to pass and the second are still standing. So when we reconvene that, we will go right back into that motion. We won't have to do that again. And I left my amendment in my office, which was a real move of genius. So we're going to stand in, unless it's right here. Nope. We're going to stand in recess for 2 minutes while the chair apologizes profusely for wasting people's time, goes and grabs the amendment. Okay. Any objection to coming back? Are we still missing? Or did member step out? I'm sorry. We're missing Muirheads. All right, pass that on down. Okay. Let's do this one real fast. We're going to open up the executive session for House Bill 261, which was not noticed, but with the consent of the ranking member, we're going to exec it. Correct, Representative Lane?
Correct.
Okay. So this is relative to election audits. I'll make the motion of ought to pass. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Representative Lane seconds. Is there any? I'll speak to the motion. This is my bill, so sorry I didn't do the hearing, but with the vice chair gone, I had to send somebody else to do the hearings on my bill, so I apologize. That's why I didn't ask questions during this hearing or 340. I was in this kind of no man's land of I have to run the committee. I don't have my vice chair, but it's my bill. So I tried to stay out of the hearings. So Representative Weary's testimony in the hearing was dead on, which is right now when we do the 10 audits for the state rep races, the law says it has to be done before. So what was happening is both sides were getting all of their volunteers there, and then they were hanging out for like 2 hours while this recount occurred. Because you couldn't tell people who were interested in the recount when it would actually begin because they were doing this audit right before it. So all the bill does, and I hate expressions like that, all the bill does, but all the bill does is change the word before to after, so that we can do the recount first, and then the audit will still occur. So I think it's probably I don't want to say it's the most boring bill I've ever sponsored, but it's definitely up there. Anyways, that's my any other comments, questions on the bill? Representative Howard.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, as somebody who did have a recount this past session, having to sit around for 3-4 hours waiting for that audit to finish was kind of a waste of everybody's time, and I am going to be supporting this bill. Thank you.
Other questions? Yes, Representative C.
Thank you. I just wanted to point out that the original concept, and I was the person who originated the audit thing, was that the original intent was that because the ballots were in the recount area, the boxes were open, the seals broken, that it would be convenient to, in addition, do an audit of the top of the ballot races. And as that concept, the audit is secondary to the recount. The recount is why everybody was there. Thank you.
Okay. I assume that means you're supporting it. That sounded like.
Yes.
Okay. All right. All right. Any other questions, comments on the bill? Okay. Hearing none, the clerk will call the roll on the motion of ought to pass on House Bill 261.
Chairman Barry,
Chair votes yes.
Representative Padumo O'Brien,
Yes.
Representative Burnham, yes. Representative Wary,
Yes.
Representative Wood,
Yes.
Representative Harvey Bolia,
Yes.
Representative C,
Yes.
Representative Gozowski,
Yes.
Representative Toner,
Yes.
Representative Mazer,
Yes.
Representative Lane,
Yes.
Representative Ward,
Yes.
Representative Gilmore,
Yes.
Representative Muirhead,
Yes.
Representative Grill,
Yes.
Representative Wilhelm,
Yes.
Representative Newsom,
Yes.
Representative Howard.
Yes.
So it's 18
Okay.
yays.
Okay, with that, House Bill 261 will be reported out as ought to pass 18-0. Is there any objection to this one being on the consent calendar because it does not have a fiscal note? All right, hearing none. And since I released this onto the world, I will take care of the committee report myself. So let me write that down. All right. Just a side note by committee reports, would really love them this evening. When we get into the flow of things, I'll be a little more strict about that. But with the amount of bills we have, I don't want to be chasing down reports. So I threatened last year to write people's reports for them if they didn't. And then a lot of you took me up on that, which was unexpected. So sounds I'm happy to pin a report and put your name on it, Representative Wilhelm. I don't know if you would be happy with the results though. Okay, so we've recessed. We only have one left. Going to open up the executive session on House Bill 340 FN. I will move. I'll make a motion of ought to pass. Is there a second? Representative Harley Billy seconds. I also have an amendment, which I believe everyone has copies of now. If you don't, I have extra copies. I gave some to the ranking member, but if you need some, raise your hand. Happy to send her down. 1, 2. Representative Harley Billy has seconded this. Okay. Okay. And I got your guys' copies now. So I'm going to move amendment. Do you need another one, Representative Lane? Okay. I'm going to move amendment 2025-029H. Is there a second? Representative Harley Billy, second amendment. So now we're on discussion of the amendment. I'll speak to the amendment. So one of the things it does, Representative Muirhead, is it does fix that numeration error. Once again, this was another one of the bills where I should have been doing the introduction, but without the vice chair, wasn't here. And Representative Lisa Mazer had to field those questions. So I will try to answer some of the questions that came up in the hearing now, but I didn't think it would be appropriate, since I was chairing it, to be doing that. So the first thing is it does make some changes other than just adding specific examples. It does change the word specifically designed to design or having the effect of. This is because the way the original bill was written, it was supposed to be broad. It was supposed to be interpreted broad. I'm very familiar with this statute. I went through its genesis, which included at the time Representative Buckley from Manchester was the prime sponsor of the original law, and it was supposed to be interpreted very broadly. And for whatever reason, the Department of Justice has decided to take a very narrowly tailored reading of it, which was not the intent of the legislature. So the reason why there's two definitions of electioneering, which is true, there already are two definitions of electioneering in the statute. There's the one that covers the whole statute, and then there's the one right now that covers specifically 44A. And this was why I know that the original law was supposed to be interpreted broadly, is the legislature would have not created a special definition for electioneering by public employees if it didn't want it to be broad. So we have multiple examples of what I believe are abuses of this law. Representative Mazer spoke to the Goffstown Public Library's survey, which might as well have read "Why are Republicans bad?" Explain why. And the DOJ's response to that was, "Oh, well, you can answer it as you see fit. You can refute the question." So you can refute the question that's biased against you, and all of your political opponents get to just answer the question because it's framed in a way to attempt to make them at least push their issue position. So I have distributed something that came across my desk, and if you'd like copies of it, this came out on January 6th of this year. So this is from SAU 39, covering the town of Amherst. So I'll read very quickly. We're excited to share some news with you on Monday, January 6th, so 3 days notice. 3 days notice. A film crew will be at Wilkins School gathering footage for a new video project. This project aims to highlight areas of our building that could benefit from updates supporting educational efforts for the upcoming Wilkins Building Initiative. The crew will be primarily filming interviews with staff, administrators, and some families. However, they'll also capture footage in hallways and classrooms. While no students will be specifically filmed or featured, some children may appear in the background. As a part of a general or B-roll shots. If your child is on the non-photo list, we'll ensure they're not included. If you have any questions, please let me know. Superintendent Michael Berry, no relation, although my brother's name is Michael. His last name is Berry, but no relation, same spelling. So he got the spelling right. I'll give him that. And what that letter, with that 3-day notice to parents fails to mention is that for the previous 3 elections, there has been a warrant article. So I think in 2024, it was warrant article 13, where they were pushing to have the town and appropriate funds for the building renovation. So my complaint here is not, I'm asking the committee, don't look at this from, oh, I want the buildings renovated. Look at this from they're sending in a film crew with the express purpose of pushing a position that will soon be on the ballot and was on the ballot 3 times before and rejected 3 times before. So the reason why I wrote this so broadly is because it is being abused and they are finding every single loophole to get around it. Public employees in the commission of their duties should be neutral arbiters in everything. And we shouldn't be trying to drag the courts into what is neutral. The definition should be broad, which is why I wrote it to being designed or having the effect of, because in the case of Goffstown Public Library, they said, oh, well, we didn't design this survey like this. We took input from the community. A right to know request revealed that was just basically made up. They generated it was a Goffstown public employee survey that they were then sending to candidates and then publishing on the website. I have heard things that I have not been able to substantiate of teachers putting leaflets into backpacks. I don't know if that's true or not. I've had multiple people tell me it happens, but I don't have any evidence in front of me. It has to stop. It's currently a misdemeanor, so I'm not making it a misdemeanor. It's currently a misdemeanor. In regards to the lawsuit was tossed because they said you couldn't bring standing in 659. Only the AG could bring the lawsuit forward. We have a separate bill for that to address that one. The judge actually did not take a position on the merits of the case, unfortunately. So what I have done is I've written the bill in a way that I believe actually addresses the original intent of the bill, which was if you are a public employee, stay out of the elections. It's not your job to opine in it. Your job is to do your job and go home. What you do when you go home, by the way, is totally your business. If the NEA wants to put out a survey of their members, they're more than welcome to do that. And they're more than welcome to put it on the NEA's website and do that. But you don't use taxpayer resources to do this. So a couple of things. A gentleman from Derry brought up that the moderator hosts a forum. The moderator is not considered an employee under RSA 273. The moderator is elected by popular vote. So it doesn't apply to the moderator now, and it won't apply to the moderator after. What it does do is it does add directors and people in appointed positions to the list of people that cannot electioneer. So the purpose of that being is, once again, Goffstown Public Library. The Goffstown Public Library is going to declare that their library director is an appointed position and thus not a public employee under the section of RSA that this uses. The section of RSA that this uses to define a public employee is in regards to basically union negotiations. So I don't know why the original drafters of this section used that. It's kind of a clunky definition, in my opinion, but I didn't change that. So the definition stays the same, except it adds in directors. So if you are a taxpayer, if you are a public employee in the commission of your duties, right, you can't electioneer. Things that you can still do. A Democrat town committee or a Republican town committee can still hold their meeting at a library. You can still have candidates walk in parades. You can still have political stuff at fairs. All of that was intentionally put in, but what you can't do, and the staff is allowed to facilitate that, just no more than they would anything else, right? So they have to treat everybody equally. So in my opinion, if the moderator is putting on a forum for candidates and the Derry Town channel wants to go and film that and show that, I don't have an issue with that. I don't think this covers that. That's in the commission of their regular duties that they would do for any community event. So I tried to, when I wrote this, to cover everything that could possibly happen, that shouldn't happen, or things that should happen. But the reality is people are playing games with the statute. The DOJ, for some reason, unbeknownst to me, is not seeking this out. By the way, I submitted this letter from the SAU to the DOJ 3 weeks ago. Haven't heard a response. So it's time to act. Anyways, that's my diatribe about this. That's the amendment. It fixes the enumeration. It adds in the directors and those who are appointed as a part of public employees. And to Representative Muirhead's question about surveys, if it's not designed or having the effect of influencing the vote of the voter, but it's simply submitting information, I wouldn't consider that as a violation. Now, if the question is released, why are, if you're using taxpayer funds for the University of New Hampshire to put up a question of why are Republicans evil, they shouldn't do that. So that would be blocked by this, I think. Yes, Representative Muirhead.
I know that your intention is not to outlaw the UNH Survey Center, but I think as the law is written, it will have that effect, and it'll have it very clearly. It says, first of all, a poll, just a neutral poll of public opinion, can have the effect of changing people's minds. I might support the Libertarian candidate once I see how, let's just say for the sake of argument, how low the Libertarian candidate is polling. I may decide to support the Republican candidate instead. So polls can have an effect on how people vote. They may not have the intention of having an effect, but they can have an effect. And 3C clearly says that organizing or conducting surveys that are expressly political are an example of electioneering. So I think the work of the UNH Survey Center will be outlawed by this, insofar as university employees or public employees will be outlawed unintentionally by the way the bill's written.
Further comments on the bill? Questions, concerns? Or the amendment, excuse me, you're on discussion of the amendment, my apologies. Further questions or comments on the amendment? All right, hearing none. I did find out we don't have to take a roll call on amendments, but we've done that in this committee before, so I'm gonna keep doing that unless somebody has a real objection to it. I do reserve the right if there's like some amendment in the future that's housekeeping and everybody's on board just to raise hands. But I get the feeling that's not going to be the case for this one. So with that, the clerk will call the roll on Amendment 2025-029H to House Bill 340. Yes, this is on the adoption of the amendment. Yes. And there'll be a second vote for ought to pass as amended. Yes. So we're just on the amendment right now. I imagine the members would like that.
Chairman Barry,
Chair votes yes.
Representative Perdomo O'Brien,
Yes.
Representative Burnham, yes. Representative Wary,
Yes.
Representative Wood,
Yes.
Representative Harvey Bolia,
Yes.
Representative C,
Yes.
Representative Gozowski,
Yes.
Representative Toner,
Yes.
Representative Major,
Yes.
Representative Lane,
Yes.
Representative Ward,
No.
Representative Gilmore,
No.
Representative Muirhead. Yes. Representative Grill,
Yes.
Representative Wilhelm,
Yes.
Representative Newsom,
Yes.
Representative Howard.
Yes.
7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So
Yes.
that's 15 yes and 2 nays.
Okay, so with that, the amendment carries. I'll now move ought to pass on House Bill 3, ought to pass as amended on House Bill 340 with Amendment 2025-029H. Is there a second? Representative Harley Bolia seconds. We're now on discussion of the bill as amended. Is there, I don't need to go through my speech again, so is there a discussion on the bill as amended? Hearing none, the clerk will call the roll. The motion is ought to pass as amended on House Bill 340.
Okay. Chairman Barry,
Chair votes yes.
Representative Perdomo O'Brien,
Yes.
Representative Burnham, yes. Representative Wary,
Yes.
Representative Wood,
Yes.
Representative Harvey Bolia,
Yes.
Representative C,
Yes.
Representative Gozowski,
Yes.
Representative Toner,
Yes.
Representative Major,
Yes.
Representative Lane,
No.
Representative Ward,
No.
Representative Gilmore,
No.
Representative Muirhead,
No.
Representative Grill,
No.
Representative Wilhelm,
No.
Representative Newsom,
No.
Representative Howard.
No.
So it's 10 to 8.
Okay, and with that, the motion of ought to pass comes out 10 to 8. I assume there will be a minority report. Representative Lane, who will be responsible for the minority report? Representative Muirhead. And I assume your motion would be ITL. I assume the motion on that will be ITL for the minority report. Okay. Trusting but verifying. All right, and I think that's all of our business today. I'll close the executive session on House Bill 340. Kind of housekeeping notes, I have all of the testimony that was handed in today in front of me. So if any member would like any of the written testimony that was submitted, I have it in front of me before I package it up and give it over to the clerk. So with that, go ahead and plan for next Tuesday. And I'll meet very quickly with Representative Lane and Muirhead to discuss scheduling for next week. But as I said earlier, I do have to go. So, okay, I'll see you guys next Tuesday.